ride with me in my foul life.
Hey everybody out there, welcome back to the old podcast world. Podcast studio here, doing another little Foul Life podcast, but this one is going to go under what we call peace of mind. And when I think of peace of mind, I think of protection in my view of what gives you peace of mind. And in today's world, especially, but I've always carried a gun and never wanting to go into a situation where I want to use it, but knowing that it gives me peace of mind and that if something goes down where I have to protect myself, family, friends, whatever the situation we call, it gives me peace of mind that I have something that's going to help me. And that's what I think of peace of mind when I think of a Sig Sauer. And so that's what we've come up with today. We want to talk about certain situations that might come up and how you train for those situations and different scenarios that you might encounter or what you have to go to through training, not only through practice of just shooting it, but I mean, basically mental education and finger control and breathing control and everything that goes in to owning a firearm, especially if you're going to carry a firearm. And we choose Sig. I've carried a Sig for a long time. And today I love the guy who I'm talking to. I've known him basically my whole life. He's my best friend. And he's a peace officer here in Reno, Nevada. And he protects our community. And my buddy, Jared Woodward, is here to talk on some of those things about what he encounters in everyday life, just as a civilian and as a peace officer. So welcome in, Jared.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I mean, you hit on some really big key topics for people. So we go over this even with our new recruits, even with guys that have been there for a while. Like you were saying, peace of mind, what works, having that with you. There are a lot of officers that don't carry off duty. It's not a mandatory thing for our agency, but there are agencies out there that it's kind of like a mandated setup for them that they have to carry. And so we go over those things that, hey, it's peace of mind that if you had to take those actions,
yeah.
you have that. Where what do you do if you don't have it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're a good witness, I guess. Well, that doesn't really save lives.
Yep.
And just like the responsibility of that, the responsibility for a civilian to take the steps necessary to protect themselves and their family. Yeah, it's peace of mind. Absolutely. I'm on both sides of those peace of minds, like what you're saying, peace of mind that I have it versus I also carry Sig. I've carried Sig for, let's see, 23, 24 years.
Nice.
I've had other guns. Do they work? Yeah. Do they function the same way that my Sigs have always functioned? Me being who I am, I've run torture tests on my Sigs. I'm not going to clean this gun. Yeah. I'm going to run it with like the nastiest, dirtiest, cheapest, crappiest ammo you can find. I just want to know. Because I want to know that I'm going to be okay, that piece of equipment of mine is going to function. And that's one of the reasons I've always chose Sig. A lot of people.
Well, I was just going to say that's another version of peace of mind, right?
Yeah.
Peace of mind of carrying it on your side to know that you have that, but also that when you need to use it, it's going to work.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. That's my biggest peace of mind.
Yeah.
For me with Sig, because peace of mind. You could give me another gun. Yeah, I have peace of mind that I have a gun on me that I could use to protect myself.
But is it going to jam on the third shot, second shot?
Is it going to malfunction in that aspect? How's the accuracy? All those things for me go into the peace of mind. Obviously, I train a lot. I shoot a lot. So some of that stuff comes second nature, that portion of it. But the peace of mind that you are able to do those things. I take a lot of people out there like, oh, I shot. I go, okay, do this. And that I'm like, that's good. That's a good foundation, but not where we want to be.
Yeah.
Is that where you'd want to be to protect your wife or child? Well, no. Okay. And it's hard. It's hard to get the time. And in some factions, the financing right now with the cost of ammunition to go out and train.
Yeah,
there are things that we can do that cost us absolutely nothing.
Give me some
to help that.
I know. I mean, what I do a lot just before, I mean, you probably do a lot more than I do because your background. What I do a lot is I have, I don't even know the name, fake bullets,
Dummy rounds.
Dummy rounds, right?
Yep,
Dead
yep.
rounds, orange tipped. And I'll practice loading. I'll practice in the house. I'll practice, finger pulls with that in. I'll practice, dropping mags and with that in and doing a whole bunch of stuff with dummy rounds. Or like you're saying, that doesn't cost anything.
Yeah, we call that our dry fire drills because it's dry. We're not actively live firing anything. So our reloads, our weapons manipulation, so dropping the slide, doing a tactical reload versus a combat reload for us. Our trigger presses. You said finger pulls. We call them I call them trigger presses because we're really pressing that trigger to the rear. Sight alignment, sight picture. Concealment, people. All right. Well, it's a different draw. I've usually got to get a garment out of my way to get my weapon, or certain females. I've got to get it out of my purse. So I go back to practice. Like you've heard coaches, we've all played ball together, and that practice how you play to a point. Like if that's how you're going to practice, that's what's going to come out in the field when you're playing, right? So practice in those real life situations. Stress. How do you induce stress on a static range, pretty much? We run people. We make them do exercise because I got to get their heart rate up. You got to get that adrenaline up. I will scream at people.
Do you play music and like scenarios and people screaming and music?
Yeah.
Or is it more just you?
Not so much on the range. I will try to stress them out in getting them amped up and screaming at them, you got to go, got to go, got to go. They're shooting at you, whatever, to get their heart rate up, to get that adrenaline up. Because your body does different things during those stressful times in those situations. Are you going to be as smooth? Well, probably not right off the get-go of those. But if you put yourself into that training mode more and more and more, you should get better and better and better. But it's a perishable skill. So I work with you for 40 hours, 100 hours, and then you don't do it for 4 years.
You're done.
We're almost back to zero.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have that knowledge base, but we work the fundamentals all the time. Stance. In fact, this week, that's what I've been the last 2 weeks working with our academy and some of the junior cadets, which are people that are looking to get into the law enforcement, on the fundamentals of shooting. The fundamentals don't change no matter whether you're stressed out or not, or combat shooting versus target shooting or precision shooting. Your fundamentals are still the same. So we do like the stance, your sight alignment, sight picture, trigger control, breathing, follow through. Those are like the 5 main portions of
let's go through
fundamentals.
Let's go through that as far as, maybe trying to teach somebody or coach them how to become a better shot. Is it like a house where you have to have a good foundation? Is that where it starts?
Yes,
you're
100%. I mean, stance and grip and all these things are your foundations for how you're holding that gun and how to accept recoil. But there are things that it's weird. Like we just taught out of position shooting, where let's say I'm in a fight and I get knocked on the ground. Well, I'm on my back. Is that the best stance?
Makes sense. Yeah.
No, but do I still have a stable platform to shoot from? Will my gun still function from me laying on the ground, or do I have to be standing up? You'd be surprised at how many people are like, well, you can't shoot from there. I'm like, why not? The gun will go off.
Yeah.
You still got to employ the proper grip, trigger control, sight picture, sight alignment. If your sights are on this target and the trigger's pulled at the same speed and the same position, when the shot goes off, your sights are in that same position. Guess where that bullet's going to go?
Yeah.
It's going to go down that range and hit exactly where the sights were aligned to when the trigger was pressed. So we get a lot of people that come out that have experience, and we get there, and it's what I teach is a different type of shooting, really, in that it's more of the combat style shooting. The peace of mind that we've been talking about, the protecting yourself. That's more of a combat shooting instead of precision shooting.
For
you're
sure.
You're not a target
automatically
shooter.
stuck in a not automatically, but you're pushed into a scenario that you're eating lunch and somebody might be coming in there. It's not like you're out at the range sitting there with a perfect stance, okay, earmuffs on, no noise, all this stuff going.
And you have all the time in the world to make your time, your shots on target. You're trying to shoot the smallest group. Well, I've said to people all the time, I go, even combat-wise. So if I try to shoot this person to stop them, and I put around, let's say, upper right center chest on a guy, and I put another one in the exact same hole, I really haven't caused much more damage to stop them. So target shooters would be like, yeah, I want to keep putting it in the same hole. I'm like, so you put 100 rounds through the same hole that just keeps going through that target.
There's no damage anywhere else.
There's no damage anywhere else. So it didn't work the first time, right? Didn't work the second time. So combat shooters, we're not as, I guess, picky in our shot placement to a point. We want center mass, but I don't have to get right back on that button and press the trigger. Like
Understood.
I'm looking to spread that trauma everywhere to a point.
That's in a situation where as a peace officer, you have to do that, or in any situation if you have to pull a gun. But there's also you just don't shoot to stop, right? There's a plenty of plinkers out there and fun havers that, let's say, don't even hunt. Mm-hmm. But they love the sport or whatever
Absolutely.
you say of going out just to plink. So there's still those fundamentals of how to properly hold a gun, how to properly press the trigger, and how to properly breathe. Breathing is probably one of the biggest things in my mind, because if you can't control your breathing, I mean, you can't keep your arm still. You can't keep, and regardless of if your trigger pull is perfect and your grip is perfect, if you can't control your breathing in your chest, that's moving your arms and everything, you're never going to be, in my mind, you're never going to be able to get on where you want it.
Well, and I would say yes and no.
Okay.
So long range shooting, like we've done a lot of stuff with us for hunting side of it, right? The further you are out, absolutely. Breath control really, really pays attention. When we were shooting out to 1,000, 1,200 yards, you move an eighth of an inch.
It's big time.
Big time out that distance, right? Combat shooting, and that we don't really hold our breath. Think about that. Like, hey, what are you going to hold your breath when that guy's coming into the shop to
you pass out?
You're going to pass out. But it even before you pass out, you start to have tremors. If you try to hold your breath for so long, your body needs oxygen.
Yeah.
Your muscles need oxygen, which is everything that controls that gun is a muscle, right? Your eyes will shake if you're not getting enough oxygen. So for me, combat-wise, I don't hold my breath. Yes, breathing is important. I wouldn't say I breathe normally to a point, but pretty close for combat shooting. I'm more focused on my sights. Yes, my sights may move up and down 1/4 of an inch. All right.
But in this scenario,
scenarios, it's not that crazy crucial.
Yeah.
I'm still looking at my sight, and I'm taking the slack out of that trigger, and I've got a good all the way back to the wall, and I'm starting to press, and I really don't finish that press until my sights are precisely where I want them.
At 10 feet, 10 yards,
25 feet,
whatever
25 yards.
It's still, it might be off an inch or two or whatever at that distance, but you're still going to
hit my target. So and I guess that's where I bring up that it's two different types of shooting in that aspect. You brought up plinkers or target shooters. They're going to take more of the slow fire approach, and they're going to hold their breath to a point. Like after every shot, they may go back through, and then they're on target, and then they stop
shooting in between breaths,
and then they're not letting all the air out, and they're not taking a huge breath in.
I understand where you're coming from, because their version of, let's say, winning or scoring or winning the competition is going through that same hole.
Yep.
Or, that target is as close as they can.
Yeah.
Whereas a peace officer or in a,
life or death type situation.
Yeah. You're trying to hit your target wherever to try to stop them.
And we shoot like mainly, I mean, all people that I'm a firm believer in teaching it this way, that we shoot to stop. We don't shoot to kill. We're not killers.
Yeah.
If that person dies because of that, all right, that wasn't our intention. I just wanted to stop
the threat.
Like if I shoot you in what we call the pelvic girdle area, or like your hip bones area, and you fall over and don't come after me anymore, well, that was a win.
Yeah.
100% win for me. You're not attacking me anymore. You're not attacking my family. You're not hurting anybody. If you've got a gun and you're still shooting, well, guess what? I'm going to have to continue to put rounds on that target until that person stops shooting. Yeah. So that's where people get really confused. Shoot to kill.
No.
If that's the case, when he's on the ground moving around, are you going to keep shooting at him because he's not dead yet? That's murder.
Yeah.
Straight up murder. There's no way around that. If he's not a threat or she's not a threat to you anymore, you can't just keep going shooting at him.
Yeah.
So that's where we go shoot to stop. And we aim center mass. So you're getting a lot of stuff out there right now with the public and that, shoot him in the leg, shoot him in the hand. And I'm like,
that's not going to stop the threat.
Well, come out to my range and I'll get you stressed out and go, shoot him in the hand. Well, you haven't hit him in the hand yet, and we've gone through 4 magazines.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as you think. That's why we try to find the biggest target area to shoot at, because there's a higher likelihood in a stressful situation we're going to hit that area. Yeah. So breathing's crucial. It is crucial because you have to get oxygen to your body. Do I think you should be panting like a dog? No, but I don't think you should be holding your breath. So I'm almost more along the lines of a natural breath. When I'm shooting on the line, when I'm practicing, I wouldn't say a shallow breath, but it's not full deep breaths. It's in between a shallow and a normal breath for me, is how I do it. Each person's kind of different because that's what works for them. Now, if you brought me back and we're like, hey, we're going to shoot this crazy marksman drill at the 25 to 50 yard line, I'm going to tell you, the further I get away, the more time I'm going to take and the more conscious I'm going to be on my breaths. Because I need to have that pause where I'm on target. But it's not like that in an adrenaline. You're screaming at me, or I gotta get rounds because you're shooting at me. We run what we call FX stuff, where it's paintball basically. I'll tell you right now, I watch them because I help instruct them, and people's masks will get all fogged up because they're breathing so hard. They are so freaked out that they breathe too much. They're breathing through their mouth. It's natural. But you can fight through that stuff. You can focus your brain to fight through those things.
And I would think, and this all comes back, we're talking about this peace of mind deal, is that all of that, if you're going to take it upon yourself to have the responsibility to carry, to basically tell yourself that if something arises, I'm going to use this gun. Why carry if you're not going to use it? If you're going to use it, you should take every responsibility that encounters. Education, breathing, trigger. There's so many things that you have to go. And like you're saying, don't take 4 years off. Oh, I passed my CCW class and I think I'm good to go because I hit the target at 3 yards to pass your test, and then never shoot again. This weekend I was out coyote hunting and I had my P365 and I I forgot my little 22 for my dispatch gun, and I had my 9 for coyote hunting. We only killed one. We didn't need we killed it then, straight off. It didn't need a dispatch when we got up to it. And so I had that on me, and in the 4 or 6-seater and everything, it got dirty as hell. I mean, caked with dirt. And Clint was like, let's shoot. And I'm like, because, it was boring, it was hot, whatever. So I was like, okay. So took out flawlessly. Flawlessly.
I honestly think that's, and I have recruits that come up to me and they're like, hey, I'm looking to buy an off-duty gun.
Yeah.
It's the number one gun I put to people. I'm like, right now, the 365 is the gun that it's what I carry. I have the regular version. I have the XL version.
Yeah.
Just because I want to see how different things are. When I bought the XL, that was the only one that would accept the red dot. And I'm doing a lot of training with the red dot for the department, trying to see if we can get that implemented across the board. So I have one of each. I'm probably a little more accurate with the 65 XL, the 365 XL than the regular 360, but it's only because it's got a little longer barrel. But at 25 yards, I'm still shooting high 90s to 100s all the time with that gun. It's a great trigger in it. In fact, I had an officer that was with me. He's carrying an old revolver. And he's like, I really love this thing. We're going back and forth. And I'm kind of, he's like, the size is great. The weight's great. So I grabbed his air weight and I put the 365 side by side, in fact, on top of each other. He goes, oh my gosh, that's the same size. I go, yeah, instead of getting 5 or 6 rounds, I get 12. Yeah. And he's like, oh, wow. I go, all my career, semi-autos have been great. Like dating back 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, people went to the revolver just because they function so much better. They're so much more reliable in that aspect. Nowadays, it's a moot point going, well, this one functions every time. Well, okay. Our technology has gotten to the point where they all function, and they function very, very well. We issue the 320 to our new recruits. I think the 320 revolutionized law enforcement, military, because it's not one size. Yeah, not one size fits all type setup. It used to be, that gun doesn't fit me, but I really like it. Well, that gun doesn't fit me.
That's the cool thing about the 320. You can go in. Actually, you can go on their website. I think. I'm almost 100% positive that you can go on the website, go into the 320 section, and pick out triggers, guards, slides, barrels, springs.
They started with everything. The fire control group is what it is. That's the FCU, gun. That's the gun. That's the serialized portion of that gun.
Where the trigger and all that stuff.
Yeah, the trigger. Yeah. So they call it the fire, like I said, the fire control group.
FCU.
FCG.
I thought it was FCU.
I think it's fire. Well, it might be unit, yeah. But that's the gun. It's serialized in that. You pull that out, I can put it in a small grip modular. I can put it in a medium, which is what comes with it. A large. They have different slides that have less weight.
Yeah.
They have different triggers, like you said. Like I sighted in somebody's X5 with a red dot this week. I love that gun. It's not the gun that I carry, but if I didn't carry my Legion line, that's what I would carry. That X5 for duty work is probably top notch for me. I just think the ergonomics of the grip, the trigger, that short, nice, crisp reset, which allows me to have quicker follow-up shots that are more accurate. Mm-hmm. I don't have to let that trigger out so far to hit that. And I think I really think that's where Sig hit the home run with it. Everybody's like, man, I can get this set up for my wife.
Yeah.
Because I can put the small grip on it. I mean, primarily women don't have as big of hands as men do. So it's nice to have that.
Do you always go with the 9? Because I know the 320 you can get in the 9, the 357, the 45 ACP, the 40.
I stay 9mm for a couple reasons. I think the recoil on the 9mm is probably the easiest to manage. And I'm looking to be able to put multiple rounds on target if I need to. And I think the FBI did a pretty good study on it a couple years ago. And if I remember correctly, there was only 1mm difference in wound channels from a 9mm to a 45.
But you get, like, in the same capacity, you get a 12 versus a
7.
Yeah, 7.
So
and what we were talking about earlier with technology between guns, technology of ammo. Back in the day, 9mm might not have done much.
It wasn't. You were 100% correct in that. That the 9mm ammo that they've developed, it's gotten better and better and better and better.
Yeah.
Where it was like, I just want to hit a guy with a baseball bat type chunk of lead, and that's why everybody went to the 45. Well, it's a one shot stop. I mean, it's a big chunk of lead. I'm like, I get you.
But if you missed,
you're
stressed out.
Because you're stressed out. Now you're down a round.
Yeah.
Second of all, the recoil on that 45 is different. The recoil impulse is different. So I've always, I won't say I've always stuck with. I used to shoot a 40 when I first started carrying, 24 years ago. I shot a 40 because it was the new craze. Hey, it's kind of the best of both worlds. I don't think the 40 kept up on its technology. I think that it kind of went at the wayside. Everybody really followed up with 9mm work, sub guns, and that's my other thing. Like, I don't want to have 45,000 different calibers in my house because it's like, okay, well, which gun? When I throw a bunch of guns or pistols down on tables for people to shoot when I do my class or whatever, I don't want to. Hey, no, you got the wrong ammo. It's more of a headache in that aspect. So I shoot a lot of 9mm.
What do you carry?
So on
like
duty,
your duty gun,
my duty gun is a Legion 226 single action only. So that I've always carried a 226 on duty.
Are you allowed to carry? Has the 320 passed the range masters?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's good to go if you want.
That's what we issue to all of our new recruits.
Okay.
100% on board. Like we used to do Glock. Sig is a better trigger, I believe. I think it's a better platform. It's better to have that option that I can change them. In fact, I've done it twice this week. Hey, that grip's too big for that recruit.
Switch it out.
I need a small.
Nice.
That one's too small because he's got huge hands. We're going to move him to the large.
Well, I know, you're with Reno PD, but I know Nevada Highway Patrol, they all went to the 320.
There are a number of agencies that have moved over to the 320 because of, I believe, my opinion is the modularity is the main key to it. And it functions. I think it's got a better trigger in it. So those two things to me make it the easiest change in the world to go to. I think the trigger's smoother. The reset's
like
better.
You're saying. I've let people shoot my pistols too, and at the end of the day, they're like, "Man, I wish that was a little bit bigger. This is a little bit smaller, or whatever."
Yep.
And that's the reason that 320 works for
so many people because that's where it's at. And the 365 as well. Like you don't know how many people are like, "Oh man,
that's my everyday carry is a 365."
Yeah. And if my off duty, that's my gun. So many people are like, "Man, I wish that was out when I bought this. I wouldn't have bought this gun." I'm like,
Yeah.
I know. And it's hard because it's technology advancements and things like that are always going to get better and better and better and better and better, right? So you're never, it goes back to electronics. Man, I wish that phone would have been out. Whatever. Like that's going to always happen to us, which is why most people, they buy several guns in their lifetime. It's not, do they need it? Well, I don't need a car that'll do 200 miles an hour either, but I want something that has the performance. So getting smaller and lighter. I mean, you think about 30 years ago, 40 years ago for a gun, most of them were all made of metal. The grip was a rubber or a piece of plastic that screwed into it, but the entire frame of the gun, slide, everything was metal.
Do
made it harder to carry because it pull your pants down because of the weight, right? Or just in a woman's purse, it's like they've already got enough stuff in there. You're putting several more pounds in a gun that people stop carrying it because it's uncomfortable, it's big, it's bulky. Well, you got to find something that is super comfortable to you to carry. And I think they did it with the 365. I think everybody's playing catch up to Sig. They're like, oh man, we got to do something because they're kicking our butt in sales.
The good thing is, by the time they catch up, Sig's going to be...
Sig will have something else out. I mean, I would say, and I've said it for years, Sig's probably the leader in that. If you look at their website and options to choose from, it's kind of overwhelming to a point for people that they're like, I don't know. I know. I'm like, I played with that gun. I've shot that gun. I have a buddy that has that. We go through all those stuff, which is nice in my field because I have that option to go, hey, you got that. Let me shoot that for a little while. Let me go to the range master. Hey, you got one of these I can play with for a little while? I just want to see. Where for the private citizen guy, it's a little harder. Yeah. I suggest going to gun ranges, the indoor ranges that we have or cities have. Rent 4, 5, 6 guns because it's different than going into the gun shop and going, oh, I like the way this feels. I like this feels. Da 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 da. And then you buy it and you get out there and you're like, man, I don't like the way this shoots. Or I thought it felt better. Yeah. Well, shoot them all against each other, and then you can go, this is the one I like. Most people that I hand that 365 or 320 to, they're like, ooh, you can see it in their face, like, man, just this grip feels awesome. Yeah.
Well, I just know that. I mean, obviously they're not the end all, but they're obviously badasses, right? Our military. Yeah. When the military test weapons, they test them probably more than anybody. Even you guys at Rangemaster, they test. Oh. And
I'd love to have that job, by the way, to sit and just test guns all day.
But obviously, they're testing guns to the highest of standards in more 100%. Situations than we would ever fathom or think of to even test them in. And when they choose the M7, 320, M17 or 18.
Yep. And the main difference in that, I believe, I've never torn one apart because I've actually never played with the M17 or M18. I think the main difference is there's a safety on them. I think you can get that safety removed, but it's basically a 320.
No, it's the P320 M17.
And I wouldn't call it a clone. It's a different model because of that safety that they put on it. But everything that I like, the grip and all that stuff, that's modular for them as well. You got different sized people in the military, and I think that's part of the reason that they really won that contract. And reliability. You go back to, they're over in Afghanistan or Iraq and that stuff in the desert and the dust. Very similar to our climate that we have here in northern Nevada, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In fact, a lot of military guys before deployments have had to come to northern Nevada area to train, but they're putting out a gun that's going to function in that dirt, that high heat, the cold temperatures in the high mountains of Afghanistan. Like, all their functions work at different climates. I have this argument with people at work all the time. They love like the competition lines of guns because they've got to be more accurate. I'm like, well, they're not more accurate to a point. Some of their tolerances are a little stiffer. That doesn't make for a better gun, period. Target shooter, maybe. For what I do, I don't want a gun that has such tight, crazy tolerances that if I get a speck of dirt in there, it won't function.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I need it to function when I need it to function. I'm not on a competition line where I can be like, oh, let me take my gun apart every 15 rounds that I shoot, or every station. After every station, I tear my gun apart and clean it. No, I don't clean my gun after every shift. So the military along the same lines, they need a gun that's going to be durable and functionable. And
it can't fail.
You can't fail at that, right? Yeah. I mean, that's life or death if they fail. Yeah. And that's where I think Sig, I honestly think Sig is the best.
On the 320,
platform.
tell me about this on the 320. That is it that they have it? Does it? Excuse me. Does it have a dual safety? Because it has the striker safety and the disconnect safety.
It's all internal.
So it's all because it's a 3-stage deal, and that's where you don't have to pull the trigger to disassemble it anymore, right?
Yes, you don't pull.
So that's another huge thing. Right?
One of the biggest reasons I don't like Glocks for cleaning.
Because you pull the trigger.
You pull the trigger, you disengage the trigger group to take it apart.
Yes.
I'll guarantee you, I don't know the stats.
Yeah, but
don't
it's
know
happened.
the stats, but it's happened. I've heard of it happening. They're in their cleaning room or they're cleaning somewhere and they have a negligent discharge because they're taking their gun apart and they didn't go through the basics,
yes.
Weapons handling. They were in a hurry, whatever, weren't paying attention. Somebody interrupted them, whatever it was. But they pulled the trigger and the gun goes boom. Well, the gun did what it was supposed to do. It's supposed to fire a round if there's a round in the chamber and the trigger is disengaged, which allows the sear to strike the firing pin hitting everything, right? The gun didn't malfunction.
Yeah. You malfunction.
The person malfunctioned in their discipline. I don't like that in any of the guns, that I've got to disengage a trigger group to take it apart. Very bad idea.
So
all of my SIGs, they have what we call a takedown lever.
Yeah, 3-point
It
takedown.
takes, you take that slide off by pulling everything to the rear, locking it, pushing down that takedown lever, and then releasing the slide lock, and the whole slide will come off where you can get your guide rod
Barrel
spring
all
and your barrel out of the gun. And then you can inspect the firing pin safety and all that stuff. So I would not buy a gun that I have to pull the trigger to take apart. I just don't. I don't understand the logic in the engineering side of it. Like, hey, you have to rev the car and pull
Make it stop
and put it into gear to change the oil. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And it's happened for people. I'm sure if you could pull the stats, there's been a bunch of people that have shot themselves in the legs.
I have a couple of them, and they typically stay in the safe now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a knowledge based thing to a point. Like, I didn't know so many people.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know any better. I didn't know that gun was even out there. Okay, well, and I do a little bit more research. I bring guns to you and Chad and all those guys, and I'm like, you got to play with this. You got to check this out. I think it's the coolest thing. And as soon as I tell you why, and as soon as you guys get done playing with it, you're like, I got to have one of those. That thing's pretty cool. Which is where you got the 365, because that's not what you were carrying before. And I'm like, you got to get one of it. Your round count's going to go up in your magazine. Your weight's almost identical.
Are you calling me fat?
No.
Oh.
No. Weight of the gun is almost the same as the weight of the gun that you were carrying, if not, even though you went up in rounds, right?
I went up in weight a little bit too, I think, this last year.
That just gives you more area to put your inside the waistband.
But it gives you
right?
bad area to pull it out of your waistband.
More cushioning. It doesn't bounce on the bones.
But I digress. Sorry.
So there's all that, and that's what's so hard for. I wouldn't call myself an expert by any means, but I'm around it a little bit more to a novice guy that comes in and is like, I don't know anything about a gun. I don't know anything about any models. I just want one to protect myself. I'm like, okay, this is where I start. I'm like, okay, let's go find something that feels good in your hand. I got 12 pistols on here. These are like the best. And I'll even borrow guns. Like, I have buddies that are Glock fans still, and that's just because that's what they've shot their entire life. Yeah. So I have one of my friends at work. He does CCW classes and that, and I've helped him out. We'll go get guns just so those guys, everybody can go, ooh, I like this, I don't like that. I like the way this feels. I don't like the way that feels. I like the way this one shoots better. Yep. So they get a better knowledge base of selecting a gun for them before they go out and spend $500, $600, $700, $800 bucks.
That's what I would suggest for anybody that is looking into getting a gun, just don't go buy one, especially just because we said it either. I
No,
mean,
absolutely
obviously we're fans of them, and we've been shooting them a long time, 20-something years. And we're going to give our opinion and push people that way, obviously, but we're not, you go out and shoot it. Go out, find somebody, come to us. Let's go shooting.
What works for me might not work for you.
Yeah, 100%. So go to, like you're saying, a gun range, buddy, whoever, and shoot a whole bunch before just going to buying a pistol.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely push you towards the SIG, not because they pay me to do any of this stuff. I don't get paid by SIG. I don't have every SIG that I own, which is quite a few. I bought on my own dime. Like I push everybody just because I think of the functionality of it, the comfort, the dependability. I think that's where it's the best. And yes, I've carried them forever. Yeah. And I did enough research before thinking, okay, what am I going to do with this gun? What's my purposes of buying this gun? I have guns that aren't SIG, that are just plinking guns. I'm like, because it's cool. And it's more accurate in long range, or it does this. It's a shotgun. All right, well, that's not their lane. SIG's pretty smart in the aspects that they stay in their lane very well. Like, they know what their bread and butter is. Do they have stuff that they expand on? I mean, obviously, they're in business to make money, and they're in business to produce stuff. They make stuff for the military that the civilians don't really get to play with, or I mean, I'd love to see it and play with it. You can go look at them at SHOT Show, but you're not going to get it out on our gun shop's shelf to go, well, I want to see what one of those does. They know what the public here is looking for, or needing. So
like you said, they hit with that
320
with the modularity.
They've hit a grand slam, in my opinion, just because
accurate modularity is to my mind, SIGs are accurate, bar none. But with that modularity, it's crazy that you can have that same gun in so many different versions to fit so many different people and still have that reliability and without having to change.
Yep. I love that for especially females, like your girlfriend, my wife, all that. It's as soon as my wife picked up the 365, and that's not what she had in her purse or nightstand or whatever. She's like, oh my gosh, why don't I have one of these? I'm like, okay, I guess I'll buy another one. So and I put that other SIG in the safe, just because it fit her hand so well.
Yeah.
She shoots it so well, right? Like, she doesn't shoot a lot, and it was noticeably different for her in how well she functioned the gun, manipulated all the slide release, the mag release, all of that. It just fit so much better for her. So she's like, I have to have one of these. If you're at work, I need some sort of protection for it. So I put it back to that. Hey, this gun's the coolest gun, not so much the best gun for you for the job. Yeah. Get a gun that's going to perform for you for what you're looking for it to do. And so, I had to buy another SIG so that my wife had one, because I work nights and she needs something at home. So she wanted to feel comfortable. Coming back to the peace of mind, the peace of mind of she feels comfortable at home without me there, because she knows. And she doesn't shoot as much as I do. But when I've taken her out every now and then, she's right back to it, and it's so fast for her to get it and pick it up. I feel comfortable leaving her at home because I know that she's going to handle business if she has to. I was
just going to say that when it comes to that, I kind of mentioned it before, and I talk to people all the time. If you're going to have the responsibility of carrying a gun, please be responsible in not only practicing all the safety measures, but we didn't even really get into it, but the laws, because if there's let's say a fight or something going on across the parking lot, you don't need to run over there and get involved. I mean, yes, you might be a hero and save something, but then what happens in the law? because there might be a law in your state that says you can't get involved. You know, there's just so many things. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but just make sure you check out all the laws and know what you're getting into with carrying a pistol. If you're going to take that responsibility on, you have to educate yourself in
100%.
in not just the guns, not just the shooting and accurate if something ever arose, but educate yourself on everything involved in that with carrying, open carry and concealed carry in your car, dashboard, going into a bar. Are you drinking? You know, can I still carry? If I'm drinking in a bar, can I go into a federal building? All the different laws that go into that. Make sure you know, crossing state lines. Where is your CCW? You know, what states do you have reciprocity with? There's just so many things. I'm just saying you have to be responsible and educated if you're going to take that responsibility on with, and coming from law enforcement.
We see it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's good Samaritans trying to be good people.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get put in positions that they shouldn't have put themselves into.
Yeah.
I'm 100% on board. If you're stepping in to save somebody's life, absolutely.
Yeah.
Two drunk guys want to sit and fight and punch each other.
Yeah.
Probably not the place to get in and deploy a firearm or pull a firearm.
Yeah.
But we see it all the time. That's where I go back to the education side of things for CCW holders. Well, I got a gun. That's not the end all. Sometimes it actually makes it worse for you and whoever else is around. There's a time and place to pull your firearm.
100%.
And we got so many people out there, they just don't educate themselves enough, and they think they know, but they don't know. They don't go through training. And that's the other thing. Vet your trainer.
Yeah, for sure.
We get tons of people that have CCWs. When I say my buddy's a CC, he's also a police officer. So we've gone through tons of training. We've actually had more discussions in our breaks about how to teach this, how to do that with our range master, all these guys that we're trying to get knowledge from. They don't have that knowledge base to fall back to. They don't have those people to go back and ask questions. All it takes is, I went and got my license from the state.
Yes.
Okay, that's like bare minimum. But they're out there teaching CCW holders. We get them in the academy and like, well, I was trained to do it this way. I'm like, oh gosh, that's really bad. And it's bad for this reason. And I'll name off and they're like, man, I never even thought of that. I go, neither did the trainer that was training you.
So that's a good point. I never really thought about vet your trainer. Look at his background. Where did he come
look
from?
at what they're doing and that stuff. Hey, I'm a school teacher, which nothing wrong with being in school, but that's your only background. I'd want somebody that has a little bit more knowledge.
Yeah.
I've gone through all these NRA schools. I went through whatever shooting schools that are out there, because a good trainer is going to keep going to schools or camps where they're getting more knowledge,
education.
And
they're going to search it out to pick.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
This new technique's out. I want to go see it. I want to see why this guy thinks it's the best. And they're making those good logical decisions. A good trainer will pull a piece or two from every little, and they'll come back and morph their training to that. Nobody's the end all say all about everything. We do it with our department. We get trainers in and we're like, oh man, let's go get that guy because he's awesome. Let's see what he can bring to the table to maybe take us to the next level of training. Yeah. So there's always that. These military guys, you guys have talked about Shaw shooting. I mean, those guys, like having
John in Houston, they're awesome.
Coming in and just getting a little bit more knowledge from these guys is great. Something I can put in my tool belt to instruct. Like some of the stuff that they may be teaching may not apply to what I'm doing, but it's still something that I can learn from.
Oh yeah. And that's not just the trainers learning, but you, after you get a CCW, or in like Nevada, it's an open carry state, so you don't even need to go get a CCW, right? Mm-hmm. But if you do either or, because I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment, I think the more guns out there in the hands of good people is way better if they are educated, if they practice, and if they keep practicing and search it out, not just carry it just to carry it to look cool or whatever it is. If you're going to do it, have the responsibility and dedication to make yourself better, to when that time arises, if it ever does, if you need to use it, you're going to be able to perform in any situation. And that's comes back to, not only does the education start and the responsibility on you, all of it comes back to having the peace of mind to when you have to give yourself peace of mind on not only your firearm working, picking the best that works for you, but in the education and responsibility of it. So
absolutely. And train, honestly, get your young people involved into it as well.
Yeah, 100%.
That's where the training should start. I've trained my youngest, my daughter, like from the very beginning of stuff. Like this is, and she knows. Like it's not a toy. It's not. I don't show my friends. But I also don't keep it a secret from her. She's like, hey, I want to go out and shoot.
It's not a
taboo, forbidden fruit type setup.
What Daddy never? Yeah. I see Daddy carrying this. What he never shows me. It's like
I don't do that. And I've had a lot of
Chase
back with people that are like, ooh, that's bad. You're teaching. I'm like, no. She loves to shoot. Like target. She shoots competition 22 stuff. She loves to get out. Like I can't afford ammunition because she will shoot so much. And I go over it with her. I go, it doesn't matter how many rounds you fired. I want good quality practice and good quality fundamentals. Even if you only fire 8 rounds for the day and that fixed the problem, oh my gosh, that's better than I fired 8,000 rounds of sloppy training, sloppy fundamentals, and I ingrained bad habits. That's not what I want. I would want nice, good habit forming.
This is
tactics.
where I take the lesson of, I've heard this from several people in the sports world, but also in the firearm world, where the old saying used to be, what? Practice makes perfect. Mm-hmm. No. Because you could practice, like you're saying, the worst technique, the worst trigger pull, the worst this, the worst that, and that's what's going to happen in the time of when you need to use it, when it counts. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Absolutely.
You have to be trained correctly. Like you're saying, if you practice all these bad techniques or whatever, it's not going to hold true when it comes there. So practice perfect makes perfect. But, I think that's a lot of good information out there. But it's a good talk, Jared.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you do, obviously, for our community and everything what you guys stand for and help everybody out with. I don't know if I could do it. I mean, I could do it, I think, but it's a different mindset to be a peace officer for sure.
It is, absolutely. And in today's,
especially today's world,
it's made some changes across the country for a lot of us. I still go out and handle my job the way that I've always handled my job. It is changing people. Some people aren't handling it the same way, and I think it's a detriment to our public. Detriment to society. Are there bad people out there? Absolutely. Are there bad situations? Absolutely. Did people handle them correctly? Some did, some don't. But you can't put everybody in the same block in that. So it's changed.
Yeah, I bet.
It has definitely changed from the time that I've started to the time that we are now.
And what's funny about that is because it's changed, my mindset has been never wanting more to do something like that. Mm-hmm. Like there's some people that, straight away, be like, man, I would never do that because you guys are getting just torched every which way but loose. But my mindset is like, I want to do it more than ever now. I would rather be a peace officer today more than ever because that's what's going to keep this,
Mm-hmm. And we get that. We get a ton of people that are like, I want to do this because I think I can make more of an impact now and a change for the better.
Yeah, for sure.
The politics get involved in some of that stuff, and it gets taken away in certain aspects. So I don't want to get this. You and I are never going to solve that big problem. We're probably not going to solve a lot of problems, you and I together, in that aspect. But I'd love to talk about this. I'd love to educate in firearm safety and that. I love teaching youth in that because those are our next people. Those are the people that are going to lead this country down the road.
Yep.
So if I can just give them a little bit of education, make them better people, whether they become cops, whether they don't like to shoot, but they understand the knowledge of
not afraid of it.
That's not a bad thing. That gun is not bad.
It's a tool.
Some of the people behind guns can be bad.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that I want my youth that I train to take away from it. I'm comfortable around it. It's not a taboo thing. It's not a forbidden fruit. Like, they're comfortable. That's where I go, and I'd like to see more of our youth get into the sporting shooting world, because I think it is a good
It used to be in the schools.
Yeah, right?
But we don't need to get into the politics. But I always go back when we're talking about kids training. I always remember my first lesson that my dad, I remember it like it was yesterday. We were out sage hunting. I was 7 years old, and it was the first time I remember first trying to touch a gun, shoot a gun. That was my first lesson, was 7. And my dad had a shotgun, rifle, a couple pistols, everything laid out on the tailgate out hunting. And some actions were open. Some had a magazine with some bullets in it. Some actions were closed. Rifle, everything was open.
I know right where he's heading with this question.
And he goes, "What gun's loaded?" And as a 7-year-old, I'm like, well, I'm looking for the bullet that, I can see in the, that one's loaded because I can see it in the chamber, or that one's, that one's not loaded because it's open, all these things. The first lesson, every gun's loaded.
Yep, treat every gun as if it's loaded.
I so vividly remember that, sitting at the tailgate. We were just below Pinot Springs in northern Nevada, sage hunting, had all these guns on the tailgate, and that was the lesson. And it still to this day is so vivid. And it's the first lesson that I taught Chase
it's
to.
hard for a 7-year-old to understand it too, even when you say, no, every gun's loaded. Well, Dad, no, that one's not loaded.
Yep.
And going into that explanation of, okay, yeah, there might not be a round in that chamber. It might be open, but we still are going to treat it as if it's loaded. We're not going to point at anything we don't want to kill or destroy. We're not going to manipulate it in front of somebody where we're pointing it at their feet or wherever.
Because they don't know.
They don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I'm not going to hand it to them closed and them go, oh, yeah, it's unloaded, because I watched them cycle the slide a couple times.
That's the first thing I did. So funny. I could literally, you could hand me a gun right now and show me cycle through, clear everything out of the magazine, show me it, hand it to me. The first thing I'm going to do, check it myself.
Yep, absolutely.
In a safe manner.
In a safe manner, 100%.
We're getting into do some stuff about it. I do want to talk about it. I think that would be a good podcast of like going down what you guys actually teach. What are the things that you actually teach in gun safety on the range? Yeah. I think that would be a good podcast of.
We can do it again.
Yeah. So anyway, I just want to say thank you once again, buddy. Love you, and
thanks for having me here. It was great.
And you stay safe out there.
Absolutely.
All you guys on the blue line, love you. Thank you for doing what you do, the guys and the ladies, and men and women of the military. Love you guys, and keep protecting us, keep keeping us safe, and we'll see you next week right here on the Foul Eye Podcast. Peace of mind.